She was just a poor janitor, desperate to save her sick mother's life. No one helped until she stumbled on a lost bag full of cash behind a building. But what happened when the billionaire owner showed up will leave you completely speechless. Stay tuned because you are about to watch a beautiful story and find out what happened next. Hello, family. Welcome to Tales Haven. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. Tasha Morgan sat on the edge of her mother's hospital bed, gently wiping her forehead with a damp cloth. The small hospital room smelled of antiseptic and sadness. Machines beeped slowly beside her mother, who lay motionless, her skin pale and thin like paper. Gloria Morgan, once full of strength and laughter, had become weak. Her kidney was failing fast, and without urgent surgery, the doctors said she might not survive another month. But surgery costs money. Money that Tasha didn't have. She worked as a night janitor at Jefferson Plaza, one of the city's biggest buildings. Every evening, she cleaned endless halls, polished shiny floors, and emptied trash bins in tall offices where no one even looked her way. Her fingers were always cracked, her shoes worn, and her meals often skipped. She barely earned enough for rent, food, and her mother's medicine. The cost of the surgery, $25,000, felt like trying to climb a mountain with bare hands. That morning, Tasha had begged her manager for an advance. The woman barely looked up from her phone before muttering, "You're lucky you even have this job." She had called old friends, texted distant cousins, walked into 2 churches asking for help. But everywhere she turned, she met closed doors. "God," she whispered as she held her mother's cold hand, "what do I do now?" Her mother stirred weakly. "Tasha, baby, go home and rest. You've been here all night." "I'm not leaving you," Tasha said quickly. Gloria gave a faint smile. "You're the strongest girl I know. But strength also means resting when you need it." Tasha kissed her mother's forehead and finally stood up. "I'll be back soon. I just need some air." The streets were quiet and cold as Tasha walked down the sidewalk. The city looked beautiful with all its blinking lights and tall buildings, but none of that mattered to her. Her mind was heavy. Her heart was tired. She turned into a narrow alley behind Jefferson Plaza, the building she had just finished cleaning an hour earlier. This path was quicker, though darker and quieter than the main road. As she walked, something shiny caught her eye near a dumpster. She stopped. There, on the ground, was a black leather bag. Clean. Neatly zipped. Out of place. She looked around. No one. She took a step closer and gently picked it up. It was heavier than she expected. Her hands trembled as she slowly unzipped the top. And there it was. Stacks of money. Bundled. Neatly arranged. All $100 bills. She couldn't breathe. Her knees went weak. She quickly zipped it shut and looked over her shoulder. Still no one. She stood frozen, her mind spinning. This money, it could save her mother. It could pay the hospital bills, buy her mother medicine, food, everything. For the first time in months, hope flickered in her chest. Her fingers clutched the strap of the bag. It would be easy. So easy. Just walk away. Just disappear. But then she remembered something her mother once told her when she was little. The right thing isn't always easy, Tasha. But it's always right. Tasha sat down on the cold sidewalk beside the bag. She didn't run. She didn't touch the money again. She just waited. Her teeth began to chatter in the cold. Her stomach growled from hunger. She hadn't eaten all day. But she stayed. An hour passed. Her body ached. Her heart pounded with fear. What if someone accused her? What if this was a trap? But she stayed. And just when she thought she couldn't wait any longer, a sleek black car pulled up. The door opened. A tall man stepped out. Clean-shaven. Sharp gray suit. Confident walk. His eyes immediately locked onto the bag, then on Tasha. "Did you touch this?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Tasha stood slowly. "I saw it, but I didn't take anything. I waited. I thought maybe someone would come looking for it." He stared at her in silence. Tasha couldn't read his face. Was he angry? Suspicious? Grateful? Then he stepped closer and picked up the bag. He opened it, checked the bundles quickly, then looked back at her. His next words were simple but powerful. "I thought I'd lost it forever," he said. "You waited here all this time?" Tasha nodded, still trembling. I didn't know what to do, but it didn't feel right to take it." "Even when you clearly needed it?" he asked, glancing at her worn-out shoes and tired face. She looked away, embarrassed. "Yes," she whispered. He took a long breath. "Most people would have walked away with it. Why didn't you?" Tasha looked up, her eyes tired but honest. "Because it wasn't mine. And because my mother taught me better." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. "I'm Miles Donovan." The name sent chills down her spine. Everyone in the city knew that name, the billionaire who owned Donovan Enterprises, the very building she cleaned every night. And now he was shaking her hand. She blinked in disbelief. I'm Tasha Morgan." He smiled gently. "I've seen you before." "You have?"
"Yes."
"You work hard."
"Quiet."
"No complaints. No shortcuts." Tasha's lips parted in shock. No one had ever noticed her. Not like this. Miles reached into his coat and pulled out a card. "Come to my office tomorrow morning. I'd like to talk more." And with that, he got into his car and drove away. Tasha stood in the alley long after the car disappeared, the small card still clutched in her frozen hand. Her breath came out in white clouds as she stared at the name printed in gold letters. Miles Donovan, CEO, Donovan Enterprises. Her fingers trembled, not from the cold this time, but from everything that had just happened. Was this real? Did that really just happen? She tucked the card carefully into her coat pocket and began to walk slowly, her mind spinning. By the time she got back to the hospital, her mother was asleep. Tasha sat beside her quietly, holding her hand with care, not wanting to wake her.
She didn't speak.
She just stared at the ceiling, whispering in her heart, "God, what are you doing in my life right now?" The next morning came quickly. Tasha barely slept. She borrowed a clean blouse from a nurse friend and wore her neat black skirt. She pressed her shoes, combed her hair back tightly, and looked at herself in the mirror. She still looked tired, but for once, she looked hopeful. She arrived at Donovan Enterprises just before 9 a.m. The building was tall, shiny, and glassy like a mirror to the sky. Business people in suits walked in and out, holding coffee and briefcases, talking into phones. Tasha clutched her small bag nervously and walked in. The receptionist looked up at her with a curious smile. "Can I help you?" Tasha cleared her throat.
"Yes."
I have an appointment with Mr. Miles Donovan." The receptionist blinked, surprised. Then, after checking something on her screen, she stood. "Please follow me." Tasha's legs felt like jelly as she was led into a private elevator. It went all the way to the top floor. When the doors opened, she stepped into a large, quiet hallway with soft lights and glass walls. At the end of the hall was a wide wooden door with gold handles. The assistant knocked gently and opened it. "She's here, sir." "Send her in," came a calm voice. Tasha stepped inside slowly. The office was beautiful. Tall glass windows showed the whole city below. Shelves filled with books lined one side. A large desk sat in the center with papers neatly stacked. Behind it stood Miles Donovan, dressed in a dark blue suit with no tie, sleeves rolled up. He looked serious, but there was warmth in his eyes. He walked over and shook her hand again. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said with a small smile. "I almost didn't," Tasha admitted. "I thought maybe it was a mistake. Or a test." Miles raised an eyebrow. "A test?" She shrugged nervously. "I mean, I'm just a janitor. People like me don't get invited into offices like this." He studied her face for a moment, then motioned to a chair. "You're not just anything, Tasha. You're honest. That's rare." She sat, still unsure where this was going. He returned to his seat behind the desk and leaned forward. "That bag you found had $200,000 in it. It was meant for a private charity drop. I was distracted during a call and forgot it in the alley when I stepped out of my car for a moment. By the time I realized it, the bag was gone. And you were the one who stayed with it. Tasha nodded quietly. It didn't feel right to take it. Even with everything you're going through? She looked down. Yes. Miles folded his hands. Tell me, what are you going through? Tasha hesitated, then spoke, her voice low. My mom, she's very sick. She needs kidney surgery. The doctors gave us 2 weeks to pay, or they'll stop treatment. I tried everything. No one helped. And when I saw that bag, I thought maybe it was from heaven. But I couldn't take it.
Not like that.
The room fell silent. Miles leaned back, his face thoughtful. Then he stood and walked to the window, staring out for a moment. I lost my mother too early, he said finally. She was everything to me. If someone had told me they needed help to save their mother, I would have done anything. And now, he turned back to face her. I want to pay for your mother's surgery, Tasha. Tasha's heart stopped. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Are you serious? She finally whispered. I'm not offering charity, he replied. I'm doing this because you've earned it. You passed a test that most people would have failed. You had a choice, and you chose integrity. That means more to me than any money ever will. Tasha burst into tears.
She didn't try to stop them.
I don't know how to thank you. You already did, Miles said gently. Last night, when you waited. That same evening, a black car pulled up outside the hospital. A doctor stepped out with official transfer papers in hand. Within the hour, Gloria Morgan was moved to St. Rose Medical Center, one of the best hospitals in the city. Her surgery was scheduled. Everything was paid in full. Tasha stood outside the operating room as they wheeled her mother away, tears streaming down her face. But this time, they were tears of hope. And as she sat in the quiet waiting room, still in disbelief, her phone buzzed. A message from Miles Donovan. This is only the beginning. Be ready for what's next. The message from Miles Donovan made her heart race. She didn't know what he meant, but something deep inside her whispered, life is about to change again. 2 days later, the surgery was successful. Gloria Morgan was still weak, but the doctors smiled with hope in their eyes. She's responding better than we expected, said Dr. Hayes. Another few weeks of recovery, and she'll be walking again. Tasha could barely speak as she hugged her mother carefully, feeling warmth return to a heart that had grown cold from too much suffering. She spent the night beside her, softly singing old songs from their small apartment. In the morning, she stepped outside the hospital for fresh air, still in her same black skirt and worn flats, and her phone rang again. It was Miles. Are you free today? He asked gently. Yes, she replied. Come to the foundation office. There's something I want to show you. Tasha arrived an hour later at a smaller but beautiful building not far from the main Donovan Enterprise Towers. The sign on the glass door read, The Donovan Hope Foundation, changing lives, one act at a time. She had passed this building many times during her janitor shifts, never knowing what it really was. A security guard welcomed her at the door and led her into a clean, bright office filled with green plants, wooden desks, and smiling people of all ages. Miles met her at the front and offered her a warm handshake. Welcome, he said. Tasha looked around, amazed. I didn't even know this place existed. That's the point, Miles replied. We don't put it on billboards. We do real work quietly. We help the unseen, the people everyone else walks past. He walked her through the hallway, where volunteers sorted food boxes, made calls to hospitals, and helped people fill out emergency grant forms. Miles paused in front of a small empty desk by a window. This spot is yours if you'll take it, he said. Tasha blinked. Mine. I want to offer you a job. A real one. You'll be a personal assistant to the outreach coordinator. The pay will be much better. And you'll be helping people like you, who just need one door to open. Her lips trembled. But I don't have office experience. I don't know how to do these kinds of jobs. You don't need to know everything yet, he replied kindly. What you already have is what matters most. Honesty, kindness, patience, and strength. We'll teach you the rest. Tasha stood there, overwhelmed. Just weeks ago, she was sweeping hallways where no one even said thank you. Now, someone was offering her a desk, a title, and a chance to help others the way she had always dreamed. She reached out slowly and touched the chair. "I accept," she whispered. That afternoon, she began her training. Her new supervisor, Mrs. Clara Jenkins, was warm and motherly. She guided Tasha through paperwork, how to handle emergency requests, how to speak with struggling families. At first, Tasha was nervous. She made mistakes. She forgot small things. But everyone around her was kind and supportive. By the end of the week, she had already helped 2 single mothers get food packages and connected an elderly man with a free surgery program. And for the first time in her life, Tasha didn't feel invisible. One evening, as she packed up her things, Miles walked by. "You settling in okay?" he asked. Tasha nodded.
Yes.
"It's still hard to believe this is real." He smiled. "It's real, and you earned every bit of it." She looked at him with gratitude. "Thank you for believing in me." Miles looked at her for a moment and said, "It's funny, Tasha, when people think of billionaires, they think of numbers, power, buildings. But sometimes, it takes just one honest person to remind us why we started everything in the first place." Tasha felt something shift inside her, not just appreciation, but inspiration. She wasn't just changing her life. She was stepping into something bigger. That night, she visited her mom with good news. "I got the job, Mama," she said, sitting on the edge of the hospital bed. Gloria's eyes lit up. "I knew it. I knew God wouldn't forget you." Tasha smiled and held her mother's hand. "Neither will I," she whispered. Tasha began her 4th week at the Donovan Hope Foundation, and every day felt like a new chance to rewrite her story. She no longer wore the janitor uniform. She now came in dressed in simple but neat office clothes, a white blouse, navy skirt, and flat black shoes Miles had gifted her on her first day, wrapped in a brown box with a tiny note that read, "Step into this new season with confidence."
And she was doing exactly that.
On Monday morning, Tasha walked into the foundation's meeting room where the outreach team gathered. She now sat at the table like everyone else, not as a cleaner on the outside looking in, but as a staff member whose voice mattered. Clara Jenkins, her supervisor, stood at the front. "Today we want to recognize someone who has already touched 5 families in just 3 weeks." Tasha looked down, not thinking it was her. But then Clara smiled and said, "Tasha Morgan, stand up." Everyone clapped. Tasha stood slowly, her cheeks warm with surprise. 3 weeks ago, she was a janitor walking home late at night. She found a bag full of money and didn't take $1. Instead, she stayed. She waited. And that choice changed her life. And ours too. More claps. A few people wiped their eyes. Tasha smiled shyly and said, "I didn't do anything special. I just did what I hoped someone else would do for me." Miles walked in just then, standing near the door. He didn't interrupt. He just smiled proudly. Later that day, he called her to his office. "You spoke like a leader today," he said. Tasha laughed nervously. "Me? A leader?" Miles leaned forward across his desk. "Yes, you. A good leader doesn't always need a loud voice. They just need a clear heart." Tasha sat, thinking about how far she had come. "There's something else," he continued. "We're starting a new program to support families with urgent medical needs, people who, like your mom, are falling through the cracks." Her eyes widened. "That's wonderful. I want you to help design it. From the inside. From real experience. You'll lead the project with my guidance. We'll call it Project Light." Tasha blinked. "You want me to lead it?" "I trust you," Miles said. "Your honesty saved my money. But your heart, that's what's saving people." Tasha sat still for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I'll do my best." That evening, after finishing her shift, Tasha walked through the quiet city park before heading home. She sat on a wooden bench, watching the sun set behind tall buildings. She thought of all the times she'd walked these same streets, tired, cold, hungry, unseen. But now, people smiled at her when she walked into work. They said her name. They listened to her ideas. She felt human again. The next day, Miles invited her to join a charity banquet. It was her first official event as part of the executive team. Tasha borrowed a simple dress, dark green with soft sleeves, and did her own makeup carefully. Her mother insisted on helping her tie her hair in a low bun from her hospital bed. "You look like a blessing walking," Gloria said proudly. Tasha chuckled. "You're the real blessing, Mama." When she arrived at the hotel banquet, heads turned. Not because of what she wore, but because of the peace she carried. Miles met her at the entrance, dressed in a sleek gray suit. He offered his arm, and they walked in together. People whispered, "Is that the woman from the story?" "She's beautiful." "That's the janitor who returned the billionaire's bag?" But Tasha wasn't there for attention. She was there for the mission. During the program, Miles took the stage and told her story. The room grew silent as he spoke. And then he said, "We rise by lifting others." And this woman, Tasha Morgan, lifted us all without even knowing it. The room rose in applause as Tasha was called to the stage. Tears welled up in her eyes. She walked up, shaking slightly, and stood at the podium. She looked at the crowd and said, "You don't need to be rich to do the right thing. You just need to remember who you are, even when no one's watching." And that moment changed everything. Not just for her, but for everyone in the room. The applause still echoed in Tasha's ears long after she left the banquet stage. For the first time in her life, she had spoken in front of people wearing suits, gowns, diamonds, and designer shoes, and yet, not once did she feel small. Her words had come from the heart, and the audience had listened, not to judge her, but to learn from her. As she stepped down from the stage, Miles met her at the stairs with a gentle smile. "You are perfect," he said softly. Tasha blushed. "I was shaking the whole time. No one noticed. All they saw was your courage." The next day at work, things moved fast. The Project Light initiative began to take shape. Tasha worked with doctors, nurses, volunteers, and even former patients. She spoke to people with no insurance. She read stories about children whose surgeries were delayed, elderly patients living in pain, and single mothers trying to choose between rent and medicine. She cried with some of them, prayed with a few, and helped all she could. Miles gave her full permission to approve funding up to $10,000 for emergency cases. At first, she was scared of such power. But he trusted her, and in time, she learned to trust herself. Back at the hospital, Gloria was recovering beautifully. She had started walking slowly, with support, and her cheeks were full again. The nurses adored her. They called her Mama Morgan, and often came to sit with her during breaks. One sunny afternoon, she looked out the window, holding Tasha's hand, and said, "I always believed in you, baby. Even when you were mopping floors, I saw your heart. Now the whole world sees it too." Tasha smiled. "I just wish Dad was here to see this." "He sees it," Gloria said gently, from above. Weeks turned into months. Tasha continued to grow in her role. She now led meetings, gave short speeches at schools, and helped open 2 more branches of the foundation in nearby cities. Her story inspired donations from strangers. People wrote letters from other states saying her name gave them strength. And through it all, Miles stayed close, not just as a boss, but as a friend. He gave her space but also showed up when it mattered. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat quietly in the garden behind the foundation building. Fireflies danced around them. The air was calm. Miles turned to her. "Can I tell you something?" Tasha nodded. "When I met you, I wasn't just impressed by your honesty.
I was changed by it.
You made me remember the man I used to be, the man my mother raised, the one who cared about people, not just profits." Tasha looked into his eyes, surprised by his honesty. "I see you, Miles. Not the billionaire. The man." He paused. "I've been thinking about something. About us." Tasha's breath caught. "I don't want to rush anything," he said gently. "But if there ever comes a time you're open to something more, I'd like to walk through life with someone like you. Someone real." Tasha looked down, overwhelmed. Then she looked back at him. "I've never known a love that didn't come with conditions," she whispered. "But maybe it's time I do." He smiled. "Then we'll take it slow." 6 months later, Project Light had helped over 1,200 families. Tasha's name was now known in places where no one had ever seen her face, but that wasn't what mattered to her. What mattered was this. She had become the light for others because someone had seen her worth when the world had not. On her mother's birthday, they celebrated at the same hospital where it all began, only this time, as guests, not patients. The nurses surprised them with a cake, and Miles brought flowers. Tasha looked at her mother, then at the man standing beside her. "Do you remember the night I found that bag?" she asked softly. Gloria chuckled. "How could I forget? I thought I had found money," Tasha said. "But now I know. I found my purpose." Gloria squeezed her hand. "And your blessing, too." That night, before going to sleep, Tasha stood at the window of her small but beautiful new apartment. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "Thank you, God, for letting me be seen, and for teaching me that doing the right thing always comes back in ways we never expect." And with a heart full of peace, she closed her eyes. No longer a poor janitor begging for help, but a woman whose honesty opened the door to everything she had ever prayed for. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, kindly subscribe to my channel, like, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.